You are watching the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Obviously, this is a significant escalation by Iran, a significant event. We are now going to look at what the appropriate next steps are to secure, first and foremost, American interests, and then to promote stability to the maximum extent possible as we go forward.
Breaking news as we come on the air, the Middle East war has escalated as we now wait for the Israeli Defense Forces' response to Iranian ballistic missiles fired at Israel earlier tonight. Almost all of Israel sent their citizens to shelters for about an hour as two waves of missiles were fired and mostly intercepted over the country in an attack that Iran said was in response to the killing of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah late last week. As far as we know, there are no deaths, but Israeli military spokesperson has said that there have been a few injuries from falling shrapnel and possibly one death in the Palestinian city of Jericho in the West Bank. The U.S. has vowed to respond if any American interests in the Middle East are targeted. National correspondent Matt Gelka has the latest on the escalation that could engulf the Middle East in a wider war.
Sirens and flashes filled the air over Tel Aviv and other cities in Israel. The Israeli military estimated Iran launched around 200 ballistic missiles at the country and escalated the conflict in the Middle East.
We dealt with such a threat before in the past, and we will deal with it now. Launching towards Israel from Iran will have consequences.
Israeli officials said many of the missiles were intercepted by the country's defenses, but there were some impacts. There were no immediate reports of casualties. The United States promised to stand by its ally, with both countries saying Iran would face consequences for the strike.
This is totally unacceptable, and the entire world should condemn it. Initial reports suggest that Israel, with the active support of the United States and other partners, effectively defeated this attack.
America recently beefed up military forces in the region, including sending more troops and resources to the area. Tensions hit another boiling point in the last week after Israel strikes against Beirut, and a new Israeli ground operation was launched in Lebanon, targeting the Iranian-backed militant group Hezbollah. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu released a video this week calling on Iranians to reject the current regime and said change was coming.
When Iran is finally free, and that moment will come a lot sooner than people think, everything will be different. Our two ancient peoples, the Jewish people and the Persian people, will finally be at peace.
Iran launched a missile and drone attack earlier this year that saw a majority of the 300 projectiles intercepted and shot down, amounting to minimal damage.
We have made clear that there will be consequences, severe consequences for this attack, and we will work with Israel to make that the case.
Iran threatened Israel with, quote, crushing attacks if there was retaliation, with Israeli officials promising they had their own plans and they'd respond when they choose to. Any response could dictate the course of the war in the Middle East. For the National News Desk in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
The escalation comes as Israel continues to expand its military campaign inside Lebanon, with troops on the ground right now targeting what they say are Hezbollah sites. Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah have been sparring for almost a year over the war in Gaza that began in response to Hamas's October 7th attack. Israel says it has no choice but to defend itself. Hezbollah says Israel is waging an unfair military bombardment in the region that has claimed far too many civilian lives. Today, Lebanon urgently called on the international community to pressure Israel to end its operation. Tonight, the death toll has climbed in the aftermath of Helene, the storm that left behind a path of destruction stretching over 500 miles from Florida to the southern Appalachians. The newest figures showing more than 150 people have thus far been killed across 6 different states, making it the second deadliest hurricane to hit the U.S. in the last 50 years, second only to Katrina. And sadly, more are feared dead. Desperation now growing to find hundreds still unaccounted for, particularly in hard-hit western North Carolina.
Our emergency responders are continuing to rescue people and rush aid to the mountains. The challenges are immense, but our joint response effort has and will continue to be massive.
Hundreds of roads in North Carolina remain closed, hampering the delivery of badly needed supplies. Here's what one resident told CNN about the trees now blocking the roads.
They're large trees, too. We're known for some old growth here. You can imagine a tree like this. It's just in my parents' backyard, but you can imagine something like that across a road or a bridge is quite damaging.
In fact, some areas are so inaccessible. Aid is being delivered by actual mules, captured right here, and also by air. Over in Augusta, Georgia, meantime, cleanup underway in one neighborhood where virtually every home has a tree on it or going right through it. And in Irwin, Tennessee, a temporary ER now being set up after a small hospital succumbed to floodwaters, leaving medical workers on the roof needing an emergency evacuation. And storm activity not done with us quite yet. We're tracking 3 tropical threats in the Atlantic, including Hurricane Kirk, Disturbance 2 further east off the west coast of Africa, which will almost certainly develop into a named storm in the coming days. And lastly, Disturbance 1 right off the coast of Central America. That remains at a 40% chance of developing in the next week. Right now, roughly 45,000 dock workers at 36 ports from Maine to Texas are on strike. Beginning at 12:01 this morning, members of the International Longshoremen's Association walked off the job as they say they are demanding higher wages and assurances against the implementation of automation at those ports. Contract talks with the U.S. Maritime Alliance have made some progress, but not enough to satisfy workers. The association president says members are prepared to dig in.
If we have to be out here a month or 2 months, this world will collapse. Don't blame them. Don't blame me. Blame them.
The union has leverage because of its importance in the economy. If the strike is prolonged, it could devastate supply chains and drive up prices for everyone. J.P. Morgan estimates the strike to cost the economy roughly $4 billion every day. The shelter-in-place order outside of Atlanta, Georgia, has been lifted. More than 90,000 people had been stuck inside for the past 2 days following a fire at a chemical plant in a suburb of Atlanta on Sunday. Officials say the chemical released into the air was chlorine, which has been ruled safe by the EPA. The local fire chief says the fire started from a sprinkler head malfunction. 103 years later, the Department of Justice has opened up its first ever probe into the deadly race riots known as the Tulsa Massacre. On May 31st in 1921, a white mob killed about 300 black residents in Greenwood, a thriving black community in Tulsa. Many buildings were also set on fire in that attack. The DOJ says there will be no prosecutions as there's no prospect of living perpetrators, but they will issue a full report analyzing the massacre in light of today's civil rights and hate crime laws. A Florida man in custody right now for the death of his ex-wife and her boyfriend in their Frederick, Maryland home. A local sheriff says David Philip Turner shot and killed Crimea Baker and Sean Lang on August 27th. 4 children there at the time heard those shots, hid, and called the police.
We believe that Turner entered the residence through a back door sometime after 1 a.m. before 1:25 and murdered her and Mr. Lang in the bedroom, firing more than 42 rounds into the victims.
Officials say police in Miami arrested Turner once they gathered enough evidence. Turner is expected to be extradited to Maryland over the next month. And a woman is under arrest in Phoenix after 6 vacuum-sealed kilo bricks of fentanyl were found in her checked baggage at the airport. Something suspicious caused TSA agents to search the bag before it got through security screening. TSA security then found the drugs inside. The woman, whose identity has not yet been released, was headed from Phoenix to Atlanta. Abortion drugs are now classified as controlled substances in Louisiana. The law, taking effect today, requires mifepristone and misoprostol to be stored behind locks and keys. Abortion is already banned in the state, but some doctors are concerned because these medications can also treat things like postpartum hemorrhages. The law is the first of its kind in the country. Sean Diddy Combs now facing over 100 new sexual assault allegations. Today, attorney Tony Busby of Texas says he will file civil lawsuits on behalf of 120 people, accusing the rapper of rape, sexual abuse of minors, and other crimes. Busby said many powerful people were also named, and he'll provide more specifics later. Combs is behind bars in New York, facing multiple charges, including sex trafficking. He's pleaded not guilty to all of them. John Amos, the actor known for his roles in Good Times, Roots, and Coming to America, and he has died from natural causes in Los Angeles. Amos loved acting, so says his son, and he was 84 years old. Coming up, what to expect from the high-stakes vice presidential debate tonight and the latest from the campaign trail. Then a warning for Jeep owners, why hundreds of thousands of Jeeps are being recalled and which models are impacted. Then the terrifying new AI twist on an old phone scam and the steps you should take to protect yourself. We'll be right back. Tonight, it is Governor Tim Walz versus Senator J.D. Vance in the vice presidential debate on CBS beginning in less than 3 hours. This one-on-one matchup is sure to touch on a host of issues that we're talking about today, from the expanding war in the Middle East to hurricane cleanup to the developing dock workers strike on the East Coast. Atral Nashar has the latest on how the vice presidential hopefuls are preparing and just how impactful this debate will be in the election.
Two Midwesterners facing off in New York City. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, a Democrat, and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, a Republican, are set to pitch two very different futures for America and say to each other what they've been saying about each other on the campaign trail.
It's pretty obvious to us that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance do not share our values in any way.
Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, who aren't comfortable in their own skin because they aren't comfortable with their policy positions for the American people.
They've been preparing for weeks, and we're hearing from some in the candidates' inner circles, like Republican Congressman Tom Emmer of Minnesota, who's been playing the role of Walz in Vance's debate prep.
I've spent the last month literally watching Tim in all of his debates all the way up to the present. He's very good at it.
Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, also from the Midwest, has been playing the role of Vance in Walz's prep, reportedly even dressing like Vance. But how much will this debate matter? 34 days before Election Day, and some early voters have already cast their ballots.
Normally, vice presidential debates don't affect the outcome of the election, but they're important for the careers of the debaters, certainly, and they can be important in generating enthusiasm for voter turnout.
Both campaigns need to garner as much of that enthusiasm as possible, especially in an election that's been so focused on likability.
According to the ratings, that J.D. Vance is doing less well on the likability question than Walz. I think both candidates have to be careful not to become the story. They're in service of the top of the ticket nominees.
Debate moderators also mindful to not become the story over how or when they fact check. This time, CBS will instead provide viewers with a QR code to follow live fact checking online. Voters' top issues, the economy and immigration, are sure to dominate the discussion. But given the escalating violence in the Middle East in recent hours, foreign policy will also likely be a top focus. In Washington, I'm Atrel Nashar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Atra, thank you. And right now, Trump hosting an event at a museum in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, ahead of tonight's debate. The former president also made a stop at a manufacturing facility in a Madison suburb this afternoon, speaking on a variety of issues, including the war in the Middle East.
I've been talking about World War III for a long time, and I don't want to make predictions because the predictions always come true. We're not going to make, but they are very close to global catastrophe.
It is a crucial visit for Trump as he hopes to win the battleground state, which holds a critical Democratic county. In another key swing state, Pennsylvania, a new AARP poll shows Harris leading Trump by 2 points, with Harris at 49 and Trump at 47. An index of 60 polls analyzed by the Hill Decision Desk HQ shows a narrower lead for Harris of less than 1 percentage point. Job openings rose more than economists expected in August, indicating underlying strength in the labor market. There were around 8.04 million openings, up from the upwardly revised 7.71 million the month before. The industries with the biggest increases were construction, transportation, warehousing, and utilities, and state and local government. Heating your home, that's going to be a lot more expensive this winter than it was last winter. You're looking at a 10% climb. That's according to the National Energy Assistance Directors Association. The reasons are colder weather expected in the Northeast and Midwest and higher electric grid expenses. Electric heating costs will go up the most, while oil heating costs will go up the least. The Education Department is working on its new federal financial aid application for high school students today with 4 rounds of beta tests, with the last one launching on December 1st. This year's launch of FAFSA is being closely watched after major technical glitches and delays prevented many students from completing their forms and getting aid on time last year. A select number of students will test the system, with more students eligible each round in an effort to help the department fix any bugs. Recall alert: Jeep warning nearly 200,000 owners of their plug-in hybrid SUVs that could be a fire risk, and urging all owners to park their cars outdoors away from structures until they can be repaired. The recall covers 2020 to 24 Wrangler 4xe and 22 to 24 Grand Cherokee 4xe. At least 13 fires and 2 injuries associated with the models have been reported. Stellantis, the maker of Jeep, says a fix is being worked on and owners will be notified when they can bring their vehicles in for a repair. Legendary baseball player Pete Rose died last night at 83 years old, and his death is reigniting the debate that dominated sports talk radio for decades. Should Major League Baseball's all-time hit leader be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame? Pete Rose was one of the best players ever. He would be a unanimous selection, but he was permanently kicked out of the game because he placed bets on baseball, including some on his own team, the Cincinnati Reds. Before his death, Rose spoke to our sister station in Cincinnati and said he served his punishment and hoped he would have gotten it before he passed.
The Hall of Fame is for the individual, his family, and his fans. Okay? And I screwed up. I know that. But I didn't kill anybody. Okay, I bet on baseball.
The Baseball Hall of Fame has a rule that prevents banned players from being elected, but they are not governed by Major League Baseball, although the Reds voted him into the team's Hall of Fame in 2016. Breast cancer deaths in the United States are going down, but the rate of the disease that has risen every year since 2012. Deaths are down 44% in the last quarter century, according to the American Cancer Society. A new study by the group attributes the decreases to advances in treatment and early detection. Blood centers across the nation are asking for your help, especially in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. Medical reporter Liz Bonas sharing why donations are so desperately needed.
Hey there, everybody. Donating blood in your local area during any national disaster helps fortify the blood supply to make sure that blood is available when needed elsewhere.
And perhaps nowhere is it needed more right now than in the areas of destruction due to Hurricane Helene. Lives are at risk right now as many hospitals are overwhelmed in these storm-damaged areas, the injured driving up the need, while supply is steadily going down.
It's just a small way I can give back to the world, and I love giving back.
It's one of the reasons Corinne Ellerbrock came in recently. She's a first-time donor here at this Hawksworth Blood Center in Ohio.
My mom donates blood quite often, so it's just something like that you can do to give back, even though it might cause you pain for a few seconds. Like, a lot of other people are in large amounts of pain, and your blood can help them.
She's right, according to the team here. When blood centers cannot open in these areas, those who can collect are often called upon to send blood and blood products, such as platelets, which help cancer and burn victims.
Platelets only last on our shelves for roughly about 5 to 7 days, so it has a way shorter lifespan than our red cell products for sure.
Since you never know, Mike Hammer says, who might just benefit from your donation?
If you want to get people to give blood, just tell them to think what's going to happen when you need blood. Where are you going to get it from? That's what we're doing here today.
Now, to donate blood, in most cases, you need to be healthy, weigh at least 110 pounds, and be at least 17 years old or 16 with a parent's permission. Type O is the universal donor. That, if you have it, is super helpful. But new donors are also desperately needed right now. Could make a big difference in our national supply. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonas reporting.
All right, Liz, thank you so much for that. And coming up, the concerns we're hearing from homeless people as Florida's new ban on sleeping in public takes effect. We have reporters all across the country covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we begin with a new phone scam spreading in Washington. Criminals claiming they kidnap a family member, and they're using AI to clone that loved one's voice.
It's absolutely terrifying. I have 3 kids that are still in school, ranging from 17 to 5 years old.
Cybersecurity expert Kostub Meady tells me many of these fraudsters host apps that kids and parents may download onto their smart devices.
And many of these applications are, malicious. And what they do is they basically gain access to the contact lists of the person using the phone, They sometimes also have access to the microphone.
Anyone who gets a call like this should ask to speak directly to the family member. Ask a question only that person could answer. The FBI and cybersecurity experts also suggest creating a unique safe word for your family.
What this law is going to do is pretty much flush a lot of people out into a system that's going to be overwhelmed, I think.
Tony Kaus, a homeless man, feels Palm Beach County is not ready for the start of the new law that bars local governments from allowing homeless people to sleep overnight in public places, such as in parks and on sidewalks.
We're as ready as that we can be at this point in time.
We were there when a county worker was installing a sign at the entrance to John Prince Park today. The sign has a number for people to call if they need shelter or assistance.
They'll speak to a representative that will then contact one of our homeless outreach team members who can be deployed to the location of the individual or assess them over the phone.
And harm reduction vending machines are being put up throughout Redding, California, with free Narcan and fentanyl test strips. The machines also have basic necessities like diapers and baby food.
It's really kind of more in the tradition of our ancestors, in that we are all here and have an obligation to care for everybody. And so we should make an effort, and this vending machine is just a small piece of that, of trying to help people in need when they need it.
The machines are funded through the tribal medical system and a grant through their medication-assisted therapy program. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Happy birthday to former President Jimmy Carter, 100 years young today. And this is how the Biden White House is honoring him, showcasing this display on the North Lawn. Carter has officially beat out his predecessors, becoming the first U.S. president to live a full century. A bit of a surprise, given the 39th president has lived in hospice care for the last 19 months. Carter's impact goes far beyond his presidency. He spent his post-presidential years as a humanitarian, doing acts of charity through both the Carter Center and the Habitat for Humanity. And that does it for this edition of the National News Desk. Have a wonderful night.